Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video, where today we're going to be completing the game with baby Pokemon only. And happy April Fools, everyone. I do think that this is going to be a very interesting challenge, because this is one of the few times I'm able to actually use a full team of Pokemon. It's just that they are all incredibly weak, but not all baby Pokemon are made equally, as we will see very soon. But how will I actually be getting these baby Pokemon? Well, I'm going to be capturing Shadow Pokemon and then swapping them with baby Pokemon as determined by a wheel. Now, of course, we can't really start this challenge until we get a baby Pokemon. So I'm going to give the wheel a spin, and I'm hoping for 3 particular Pokemon on this wheel of 10. So what do we end up with? We get Elekid, Igglybuff. Okay, well, Igglybuff's not a terrible place to start. So it has 90 HP, 30 attack, 15 defense, 40 special attack, 20 special defense, and 15 speed, and gets access to mostly normal moves as well as a decent type coverage of normal, psychic, water, grass, fire, electric, and psychic and ghost, which could come in handy. But I think overall this is definitely one of the weaker baby Pokemon we could have started with, but the 90 HP is pretty nice. So with that, let's go ahead and get right to our Igglybuff, which has a bashful nature, which is a neutral nature, so not the greatest, but it's okay. It has the cute charm ability, which has a chance to infatuate the target on contact when it hits me with a move about a third of the time. And then according to Bulbapedia, it gets Sing, Charm, Defense Curl, and Pound by level 10. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and catch our second Shadow Pokemon, which happens to be Ladybug here. And even though catching Ladybug isn't really that much of an issue, it can be kind of difficult to get through the battles, especially if the opponent's Pokemon just keeps attacking your main Pokemon. But luckily, eventually, I'm able to take down the Tailo and get my first Pokemon. One thing to note is you might still see that I have the Shadow Teddiursa. The reason I'm keeping it is because you do need one Pokemon to de-Shadowfy at the Purify Chamber. Anyway, with that, we now have our second Shadow Pokemon, which means we get our second baby Pokemon. Now I'm really hoping for something a little better than Igglybuff. Magby, please? Yes, okay, we got Magby. Now Magby is definitely one of the stronger baby Pokemon, and that's because it has 45 HP, 75 attack, 37 defense, 70 special attack, 55 special defense, and 83 speed. So it's one of the fastest baby Pokemon that you can get. And even though its type coverage isn't amazing, just being a fire type is pretty good in this game. So now we go ahead and move on to our Magby in particular, which has a docile nature, which is unfortunately another neutral nature, but I would rather that than have a loss in speed or special attack. It has the Flame Body ability that makes it so any contact moves that hit Magby have a chance to burn the target, which could come in handy, and according to Bulbapedia, it gets Ember and Leer by level 10. So with that, we go ahead and move on to our last Shadow Pokemon we can catch for quite a while, which is the Shadow Poochyena here. So we give the wheel another spin. Now I am hoping for another good Pokemon. Wynaut would be good? Nope, Cleffa. Okay, well Cleffa's not terrible, I guess. Anyway, it has 50 HP, 25 attack, 28 defense, 45 special attack, 55 special defense, and 15 speed. And gets access to about the same moves that Igglybuff did. The only real difference is that I think that Cleffa is a little better than Igglybuff defensively. Yeah, it doesn't have quite as much HP, but it does have a better defense and special defense stat. So I think that between the two normal types, I'll probably use Cleffa more. So with that, we go ahead and move on to our Cleffa in particular, which has a relaxed nature, raising its defense but lowering its speed. Not really the best for it, but I guess it'll be able to survive and attack a little better, maybe. It gets the cute charm ability as well, just as Igglybuff did, and according to Bulbapedia, it gets Pound, Charm, Encore, and Sing. Now Encore is extremely powerful, so maybe it'll come in handy. And because I do think that Cleffa is probably a little better, I'm going to teach it Seismic Toss rather than Igglybuff, and I'm going to teach it over Pound, just so it can do some consistent damage. And I've never had this happen before, but Teddiursa actually picked up a King's Rock, which is an item that gives all attacks a chance to flinch, I believe. It never actually ends up happening, but it was cool to see. And of course, I can't do this video without bringing up the trainer that exclusively uses baby Pokemon, at least the first time you fight her. I actually have never come back and fought her later in the game, so maybe she evolves them. But at this point, she uses only baby Pokemon. Of course, I am definitely stronger than them, so try as they might, they fall to my overwhelming power, and I get to show off a battle I never really do, because there's not really a reason to do this fight, especially with the amount of Pokemon that use Charm. Anyway, we move on to the battle against the old man, and I lead with my 2 normal types, and that's because I want to make sure that Magby is strong enough to take down the Broomish in the back, and to make sure that I don't get hit by Horsey's water guns too much. Now, neither of my normal types actually take too much damage from these Pokemon. I do want Magby to actually get some experience and take down the Shroomish, because it is the most important Pokemon on the team right now, so I want to make sure that it gets as high level as it can. And with another Ember and Seismic Toss, I'm able to finish off the Shroomish and beat the old man with relative ease. Anyway, moving on to the Power Rangers, I decide to fight Green just because I know I can do super effective damage to him. Anyway, let's go ahead and start the rambling. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Anyway, happy April Fool's Day. I decided that the baby Pokemon would be a pretty good fit for this, and I think I might have underestimated just how long this video was going to be, because this is the longest video I've had in a very long time, and in the current cut it's looking to be around 45 to 50 minutes, but all that to say, if you enjoy the longer content, let me know. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it all the time, this is more of a special occasion, but if you would like to see more long form content, let me know. Anyway, we are very quickly nearing the 1-year anniversary of the channel, which should be this Saturday. Now don't worry, there is going to be an upload on Friday as well as Saturday, just to keep it up with the normal format. But I already have the idea planned out for Saturday, I just need to actually get the videos done. So hopefully I can actually meet the deadline. Anyway, that's enough rambling for now, because we run into Seedot, which is our next Shadow Pokemon we can catch, and a big thing to note is that it's actually level 17, which is going to be a huge level boost to whatever Pokemon it ends up being. So I go ahead and catch it with the Ultra Ball I got off of Teddy Ursa, and I give the wheel spin. I'm really hoping for something quite useful, and I get Wynaut, because why not? It's definitely not the best Pokemon to make use of those extra levels, but it does have 95 HP, 23 attack, 48 defense, 23 special attack, 48 special defense, and 23 speed, and gets access to not a lot of moves. However, it does have Counter, Mirror Coat, Destiny Bond, and Encore, which could make a solid set, and this is the first Pokemon to actually be leveled past the highest level move, so I will actually be able to pick my moves from the list, which is going to be the 4 I just listed because those are the best moves it gets for this challenge. Anyway, our Wynaut in particular has an Adamant nature, raising its attack and lowering its special attack, which is effectively useless because it only uses Counter and Mirror Coat to do damage, which is based on the opponent's damage, so it's not that great. It has the Shadow Twig ability, which prevents foes from escaping, so no switching out, which is basically useless, and it has Counter, Mirror Coat, Encore, and Destiny Bond. So with that, we go ahead and move on into the Cypher base, and we catch a Spinarak, which is our next Shadow Pokemon, which, please give us something good, Wheel. I'm begging you. Something strong. Come on. Smoochum, I'll take it. Okay, Smoochum is quite good, but not so much at the moment. And that's not because of its 45 HP, 30 attack, 15 defense, 85 special attack, 65 special defense, and 65 speed. It's more so that it's only got Powder Snow as its best attacking option at the moment because it gets Stab. However, it's a spread move, so it does lose some of that damage. It does get Lick, which has a chance to paralyze, and Pound, which is decent. And Sweet Kiss has a chance to confuse, but at the moment it's just not all that strong. With it only having 15 defense, it will go down pretty easy, but eventually it will be incredibly strong. Anyway, our Smoochum in particular has a gentle nature, raising its special defense and lowering its defense even further, which is honestly fine. I know that it's going to go down incredibly easily anyway. It gets the Oblivious ability, so it can't be attracted, which could come in handy, and it gets Pound, Lick, Sweet Kiss, and Powder Snow by level 10. So with that, we go ahead and move on into the Cypher building a little more, and we find a Numel. which is a Pokemon I probably would have caught anyway, just because it's holding the charcoal item. But anyway, with another Shadow Pokemon means another Wheel Spin. Now, we've already gotten 2 out of 3 really strong Pokemon, so Azurill's not really too bad of an addition. It's not great, though. It has 50 HP, 20 attack, 40 defense, 20 special attack, 40 special defense, and 20 speed, making it pretty well rounded, but also quite weak. But it does have water type coverage, which could be very handy for naps. And you might notice that it's a normal type. That's not a mess up. It actually is a normal type until it evolves into Meryl, which is weird. I don't know why they decided to do that. Anyway, our Azurill has a mild nature, raising its special attack, but lowering its defense, which is fine because I don't think I'm going to keep this for too long, and it really just needs to do decent damage to Rhyhorn. It gets the Thick Fat ability, reducing fire and ice damage by half, which is incredibly strong. However, with how weak it is, I don't think it's going to be all that useful. And it gets Splash, Charm, Tail Whip, and Bubble by level 10. Anyway, at level 14, Igglybuff gets Sweet Kiss, which I'm going to teach over Defense Curl, just because it could come in handy. And I catch Carvanha, which is my next Pokemon, and it's also holding the Black Classes item, which could come in handy. Now to give the wheel another spin, and we only have 4 left. And we get Togepi. Now Togepi is okay. At least that's what I thought. But we won't get to that for quite a while. Togepi has 35 HP, 20 attack, 65 defense, 40 special attack, 65 special defense, and 20 speed. It gets access to quite a few normal moves, and Electric, Grass, Fire, Water, and Ghost. So it could definitely be kind of strong. It's just unfortunate that its attacking stats aren't that great, but its defenses are actually pretty decent for a baby. So with that, we go ahead and move on to our lonely Togepi with a higher attack stat and lower defense stat. So maybe it'll actually be able to do damage with its normal stab. However, losing a bit of defense isn't great. It gets the Serene Grace ability, doubling any potential side effects of moves, such as Headbutts, Flinches. And according to Bulbapedia, it gets Growl, Charm, Metronome, and Sweet Kiss by level 10. So with that, we go ahead and move on, and we run into a Shroomish, which I'm going to catch for our next Shadow Pokemon. And at this point, there's really only one other Pokemon that's decent out of the 3. So I give it a spin and land on Tyrogue. Now Tyrogue could be decent, but it has 2 glaring flaws. The first of which is that it has 35 base stats across the board, making it overall a very weak Pokemon. And it only gets Tackle by level up, which isn't terrible, but it really doesn't help that I have to use TMs on it to make it even worthwhile. And even though it does get Earthquake, which is incredibly powerful, it doesn't really play well with the other babies, so it's not going to get used. But we still need to go over Tyrogue's naughty nature, which raises its attack and lowers its special defense, which is honestly about as good as I could have got. It gets the Guts ability, which is a very strong ability. However, it would require it to be paralyzed, poisoned, or on fire to make use of it, which isn't great. And of course, it only gets Tackle. Also, I just want to show off Azurill's really only contribution, and that's doing about an 1/8 to Rhyhorn. Anyway, we move on to the battle against Lavrina. She leads with a Love Disc and a Beautifly. I go for Tail Whip and Seismic Toss, just to get a little bit of damage in. And I'm able to lower the defense of both. Go for Seismic Toss, not quite doing half to Love Disc. Water Gun takes Cleffa low, and Gust does nearly half to Azurill. And the reason I'm going for Tail Whip is just in case I need to bring in a Pokemon with physical moves, I'm able to actually do effective damage despite the fact that we're all babies. Which, in hindsight, doesn't really make too much sense because most of my Pokemon are special attackers. But I'll fix it in the second attempt, I'm sure. Anyway, Azurill goes down, I bring out Wynaut, and that's because I want to take down one of our Pokemon by having it just attack Wynaut, and I'm going to go for counter, hoping that the Beautifly decides to gust into me again. I take a Water Gun, use Ember to finish off the Love Disc, out comes Roselia, which is always a threat, so I need to finish off quickly. Unfortunately, Beautifly decides to target Magby instead of Wynaut, and it gets a crit, taking me down fairly low. Ember really doesn't do that much damage, so I get Leech Seeded. And unfortunately, the Beautifly has decided to start using Thief into Wynaut, so I'll have to use Mirror Coat, but I'm at too low a health to actually make use of it. I send out Smoochum, but Beautifly goes for Gust, taking down Magby. Out comes Togepi, my final Pokemon, and I go for Powder Snow, taking down Roselia, and doing a decent amount of damage to Beautifly. Then out comes her final Pokemon, but not before I go ahead and teach Yawn, which could definitely come in handy. And Beautifly hits a Gust, taking Smoochum down to 8 HP, go for Metronome, getting Disable, which isn't really that great. I go for another Powder Snow, get Shadow Rushed. Powder Snow doesn't do enough. I survive on 1 HP, I get a Yawn out on Delcatty, but at this point it's already too late. Smoochum goes down, and Thief finishes off Togepi. So I go into the battle once again with the same plan, more or less. However, this time there's no reason to be using Tail Whip, so I decide to go for Charm into the Beautifly. That way it's not doing so much damage with Gust, and maybe it'll start just using Thief instead, which I can work around a little better. Go for another Seismic Toss, which might actually be able to take down the Love Disc before Magby comes out, but unfortunately Azurill goes down. Beautifly goes for Thief into Cleffa, and Beautifly is actually Cute Charmed, which means that it won't attack 50% of the time. So that could be quite helpful. Roselia gets taken down to half, and heals up to about 3/4, and takes down Cleffa, so the Cute Charm's gone. I decide to send out Togepi. Thief goes into Magby, not really doing too much damage, but burning Beautifly. So it definitely won't go for Gust anymore. Go for Ember to nearly take down Roselia. Another Thief. Leech Seeds or Togepi. And I use Metronome and get High Jump Kick, which isn't enough to actually take down Roselia, unfortunately. I decide to go for Yawn and take down the Roselia, that way that the incoming Delcatty is actually put to sleep, and so I can start taking it down slowly. But it will have a turn to attack, so hopefully I'm able to survive. I decide to switch Togepi into Smoochum, that way I can do as much damage as I can. It goes for Shadow Rush, nearly taking down Magby. I go for Ember, not really doing that much damage. And unfortunately Smoochum does get hit by a Thief. But now that Delcatty's asleep, I can slowly start chipping it down. Go for Powder Snow, which takes Beautifly down to red. Smoochum survives on 9 HP. Go for another Ember, which takes it down to yellow. Powder Snow finishes off the Beautifly, and now I can do full damage with Powder Snow. But I decide to swap Smoochum out for Wynaut, that way I can use Destiny Bond to guarantee that Delcatty goes down. I use Ember, which actually gets a crit and takes it down anyway, so it didn't really matter. And of course, you can't have a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video without the obligatory Mirror B. How you doing today, Mirror B? Well, it's always good to see you, but we actually need you today, and that's because you have a Shadow Pokemon. In this case, Shadow Voltorb, which I'm going to want to steal from you in order to get our second to last Pokemon, which, with the spin of a wheel, we determine is Elekid, which is actually incredibly strong, and the final Pokemon that I really wanted to get, and that's because it has 45 HP, 63 attack, 37 defense, 65 special attack, 55 special defense, and 95 speed, making it the fastest baby. And it gets access to mostly normal and electric type moves. However, it does get Psychic and Brick Break, which could come in handy. So I think overall, Elekid is a pretty solid Pokemon. But our Elekid in particular has a calm nature, raising its special defense but lowering its attack, which is alright, I guess. We're not really going to be using the attack stat too much. It has the static ability, which allows us to paralyze the opponent whenever they hit us with a contact move, and according to Bulbapedia, it gets Quick Attack, Leer, Thunder Punch, and Light Screen by level 19. And soon after, we pick up our final baby Pokemon from the Shadow Makuhita, which is Pichu. And Pichu has 20 HP, 40 attack, 15 defense, 35 special attack, 35 special defense, and 60 speed, and gets access to mostly normal and electric type moves. And even though I do think that Pichu could be decent, I already have Elekid, which does basically the same thing that Pichu does, but better. So I can't really see our reason to have Pichu on the team as well. And our Pichu in particular has a jolly nature, raising its speed but lowering its special attack, which isn't really that great. The speed could be helpful, but it's already kind of fast as is. it gets the static ability as well, and according to Bulbapedia, it gets Thunder Shock, Thunder Wave, Charm, and Sweet Kiss by level 18. But unfortunately, it's just going to get boxed because Elekid does everything it does, but better. So with that, we go ahead and move on to the Realgam Tower and pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect. I'm going to go ahead and buy Fire Blast for Magby just in case I need that extra bit of damage for Snaddle coming up. And I decide to go ahead and teach Hidden Power to 3 of my Pokemon. I decide to teach it to Magby, Elekid, and Togepi. And you can pause it now, but basically only Magby has a really decent one. Togepi's okay, but Poison's just not great of an offensive type. At level 25, Elekid gets Swift, and I go ahead and pick up the Swinub for the Never Melt Ice, just so I can do more damage with Ice Beam when I teach it to Smoochum. And at level 21, Smoochum also gets Confusion, and we go into the battle against Snaddle. He leads with Quagsire and Lantern. I go for Thunder Punch into Lantern, not really doing that much damage, and Ice Beam into Quagsire, also not doing that much damage. Luckily, Slam does miss. I go for another Thunder Punch, taking Lantern down to half, and Ice Beam nearly finishing off Quagsire, but unfortunately Elekid goes down to a Flail. I bring out Cleffa. Water Gun hits Cleffa, getting a crit and nearly taking it down in a single hit. Ice Beam does finish off Quagsire though, then out comes Lunatone, which is his first Shadow Pokemon, and as long as there's nothing that can be one-shot, it will just go for Shadow Sky. So I decided to bring out Wynaut and use Encore on the Lunatone, that way it will constantly use Shadow Sky so it's not a threat anymore. Shockwave hits Wynaut, taking it down to half, but it wasn't quite enough to take it down, so it does get off the Encore. Now we are always going to have Fruity Pebbles up, which is a little unfortunate, but I go for Ice Beam to nearly take down the Lantern. Flail hits Smoochum, taking it down. I bring out Togepi, go for Mirror Coat, which fails because it didn't decide to attack me. And now Lantern is down to just a smidgen of health. I go for Hidden Power to hopefully finish it off. Wynaut goes down to a Flail. I bring out Magby. Hidden Power does finish it off, which brings out Castform, which could be a threat depending on what move it decides to go for. I go for Fire Punch and Hidden Power to hopefully take it down in just one turn, which Fire Punch does take it down to half. It hits a Weather Ball, doing quite a bit of damage to Magby. Hidden Power does nearly nothing, and Fruity Pebbles rain down. I can finish it off this turn with a Fire Punch though, and then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Fatang, but unfortunately the Encore is probably getting close to being over, which it ends on this turn. I decide to go for Yawn into Lunatone while it sets up another Shadow Sky, so hopefully it'll fall asleep before it can take us both down. Fatang is taken pretty low by the Fruity Pebbles and the burn damage. Unfortunately it survives on just a sliver, and I'm too slow to outspeed the Lunatone, and we both go down. Okay, well it was a very close first attempt. I go back into it again, this time changing up my strategy a little bit because last time I was locked into having Elekid because I started the previous battle with it. Instead I bring Cleffa this time to help take down the Quagsire as quick as possible, then out comes Lunatone once again. And because Cleffa does have Encore, I should be able to Encore it into using Shadow Sky, but Smoochum does go down, so I bring out Wynaut, which can use Encore. Unfortunately, Lunatone does decide to go for Shadow Wave this time instead, because it saw a KO on Cleffa probably. It just got a bad range, so I'm glad that I didn't Encore it into using that move over and over again. Go for Thunder Punch, which isn't quite enough to take it down, so it is able to finish off Cleffa and do a little bit of damage to Elekid. I bring out Togepi. Shockwave hits Togepi, doing about half of its health. I go for Yawn into the incoming Castform and finish off the Lunatone with another Thunder Punch. And then Lantern hits a Facade, not really doing too much damage. It gets paralyzed, so hopefully I can survive a few turns just by it being paralyzed. Castform takes about half of its health in a single Thunder Punch. Now I am hoping that Metronome gets a decent move. It does get Reflect, which could come in handy for surviving the Facades from the Lantern. Unfortunately, Togepi does go down, so I bring out Magby and go for Hidden Power and Thunder Punch into Lantern, nearly doing half. Water Gun does do quite a bit of damage to Magby though. Another Thunder Punch, taking it down low, and another Hidden Power, not quite finishing it off. Lantern does get paralyzed though. I go for Thunder Punch to finish it off, and Fire Punch to start doing damage to the Matang, which it nearly takes it down in a single hit. Go for another Fire Punch and Thunder Punch combo, which takes down Castform, and Fire Punch finishes off Matang. So a second try victory, not too bad. Now, despite them existing in this game, you're not actually able to use them, or at least I wasn't able to port them in. So unfortunately, Bonsly didn't make the cut for the baby Pokemon, and neither did Munchlax. But I'm sure their evolutions will have time to shine eventually. Moving right along, I go ahead and teach Flamethrower over Ember, and Psychic over Lick, and I teach Sunny Day over Smog. Anyway, we move into battle against Gonzap. He leads with a Nuzleaf and an Electrode. I go for Mirror Coat and Ice Beam on the first turn. Unfortunately, Wynaut does get hit with a Fake Out, but it does survive a Spark. Electrode gets taken down to half. I go for Destiny Bond and Ice Beam to finish off the Electrode, and then he sends out his Vileplume, which should go down to a single Ice Beam. Wynaut goes down, so I bring out Magby just so I can do the most amount of damage and guarantee that it goes down. And Flamethrower does take it down. Out comes Whiscash. Go for Ice Beam into the Nuzleaf, which takes it down. And I know I outspeed the Whiscash, so I go for Flamethrower into Skarmory, which takes it down in a single hit. And go for Ice Beam into the Whiscash, and I get a lucky freeze, so I should be able to safely take it down. I go for Ice Beam, bring out Cleffa, that way I'm not using Fire-type moves into it, which would defrost it, and I'm able to take it down with just a couple more Ice Beams. An easy Gonzap. Now, I go into the battle against Zook, and this is actually the third attempt overall. I lost the first one, but you're able to move on past it. But this is now the second Zook, and I've already lost once to him as well. And his Pokemon don't change in level or anything. So I think it's only fitting that the big bad bully character actually just stomps our baby Pokemon pretty well. And that's mostly due to Zangoose being fairly tanky against us and also doing a ton of damage, and Doduo having Tri-Attack, which can burn, freeze, or paralyze us, which happen more often than you'd think. And if you're slower than either the Carvanha or Seviper, it will use Bite, which always has a chance to flinch. So it's not a great position to be in, and that's what caused my 2 failures against him. Now, we are eventually able to take it down with the combined efforts of all of our Pokemon, but as you can see, it wasn't a walk in the park at all, and it took nearly all of them to take him down. Now, inside the building, I teach Thunderbolt to Elekid over Thunder Punch, and Smoochum gets Fake Tears, which I teach over Confusion. We move on to the battle against Scorrigan. He leads with a Lairon and a Celio, and I go for Thunderbolt into Celio, nearly taking it down. Go for Psychic to finish it off, though. And then out comes Slowking. Now, because I do think that Lairon's going to be using Earthquake this turn, I decide to double into it, which I am able to take it down. And then out goes Ursaring, but Slowking actually uses Earthquake this turn, taking down both of my Pokemon, while also doing a little bit of damage to Ursaring, but not as much as I would like. I send out Wynaut and Togepi. Hopefully they are bulky enough to get off a counter and a yawn. Unfortunately, Ursaring does go for Protect. Wynaut does survive, but Togepi doesn't. I send out Magby, and it hits a counter, taking down Slowking. Then out comes his first Shadow Pokemon, which is Primeape. And unfortunately, I don't think I can really win at this point. I decide to go for Encore into Ursaring, maybe hoping that it goes for Earthquake. But unfortunately, Wynaut goes down. I send out Cleffa. I use Flamethrower into Primeape, only doing half. Ursaring hits a Slash, taking Cleffa down in a single hit. And Shadow Rush nearly takes me down. I'm able to take down Primeape though and get a little bit of experience. And we get to see his final Shadow Pokemon, which is Hypno, before going down. At level 21, I teach Encore to Togepi, and we go into the battle for our 6th attempt now. And a few things I've learned is that with a few more levels, I'm able to take down Celio with Thunderbolt, and I go for Sunny Day just so I can take down the Lairon in a single hit. So after Celio's down, I go for another Thunderbolt, taking Slowking down fairly low before taking down Lairon. It goes for Water Pulse, not enough to take down Magby though. I go for Flamethrower into the Slowking and the Primeape coming out, which I know Primeape's a 2-shot with Flamethrower. Even in the sun, it's not enough to take it down in a single hit. Go for another Thunderbolt and Flamethrower into it though, which takes down the Primeape, brings out Hypno, and I go for Flamethrower, which takes the Hypno down to half. Slash does finish off Magby, unfortunately. I send out Smoochum, and go for another Thunderbolt and Ice Beam into Hypno, just to guarantee that it goes down, which it does, and then all that's left is Ursaring. It hits a Brick Break into Elekid, which isn't enough to take it down. Thunderbolt takes it down to half, and Ice Beam finishes it off. Okay, well that was the hardest boss fight so far. And at level 26, Togepi learns Follow Me, which I teach over Hidden Power. Now, while they're not doing great, they are doing better than I expected from a whole bunch of baby Pokemon. So hopefully this will go well into the final area of the game. I don't know. We go into the battle against Lavrina. She leads with a Gardevoir and a Gorbis. I go for Thunderbolt to take down the Gorbis in a single hit and go for Mirror Coat, hoping that the Gardevoir decides to attack Wynaut. Unfortunately, it does just go for Attract, and because I really don't want to deal with it, I decide to swap Wynaut into Magby. I go for Light Screen just to raise my special defense a little bit, get hit by a Leech Seed, which is a little unfortunate, go for Thunderbolt and Flamethrower into Gardevoir, hoping to take it down, but it does survive on just a little bit of health, and I get attracted again. Now luckily Elekid is faster, so it's able to take down the Gardevoir before Magby attacks, so I'm able to take down the Roselia unfettered by Attract. And then out comes her final two Pokemon, Shadow Farfetch'd and Altaria. And unfortunately I am feeding Altaria with Leech Seed, so I do decide to swap out Magby for Smoochum, which maybe wasn't the best idea, because if Altaria did decide to attack Smoochum, this would have been a much harder fight, but it isn't. Thunderbolt gets a crit, taking it down fairly low, and Ice Beam finishes it off. So, a first try victory. At level 43, Magby learns Confuse Ray, which I teach over Fire Punch, and at level 31, Togepi learns Wish, which I teach over Charm. And we go into the battle against Snaddle at the top of the mountain. He leads with a Metang and a Quagsire. I go for Follow Me, which is an incredibly powerful move because it means that I can redirect any moves that might deal damage to my Magby. In this case, Mudshot would have done quite a bit to Magby, and I'm able to take down both the Metang and Scizor without it getting hurt at all. And Quagsire takes down my Togepi with Brick Break, and I decide to send in Cleffa. That way I can use Encore to trap the Soul Rock into using only Shadow Sky. And I decide to go for Confuse Ray into Quagsire, just so maybe I can survive another attack without either of us getting damaged, which I do get that luck, and it hits itself in confusion. Fruity Pebbles rain down. I go for Seismic Toss to start doing damage to Quagsire, and I decide to send in Smoochum because Ice Beam is better equipped to take it down. It does hit Brick Break, taking down Cleffa, so I send in Elekid, which, while it doesn't have a good move against Quagsire, once Quagsire goes down, it'll definitely be very helpful against the next two Pokemon, and in the meantime it can use Light Screen to lower some of that damage that the next two Pokemon will do. Unfortunately, Ice Beam just misses the one-shot, but Quagsire takes itself down with Confusion, and then out comes Castform, which takes a little bit of chip, and Encore ends, which is a little scary, but it should just go for Shadow Sky again. Unfortunately, I don't have a Pokemon out with Encore, so I do need to take it down this turn, and that brings out the Shadow Starmie, which, as long as I outspeed it, I should be able to take it down. I go for Thunderbolt into it, and Ice Beam, which Thunderbolt doesn't quite take it down. Shadow Break hits, taking down Smoochum. I bring out Magby, but luckily I do know I am faster than it. Castform doesn't get the KO, so I take it down, and then all that's left is the Castform, which just survives a Flamethrower, but can't survive another Thunderbolt. So a pretty easy Snaddle as well. Moving on to Ardos, he leads with a Swellow and an Alakazam, and I decide to go for Sunny Day on the first turn to interrupt Swellow's Shadow Sky, and Elekid can take down the Swellow. Out comes Kingdra. Alakazam hits a Psychic, doing well over half to Elekid and getting a special defense drop. I go for Thunderbolt and swap into Cleffa, and that's because I need to take down this Kingdra, otherwise Magby can't be on the field. Unfortunately, Cleffa does go down to a Psychic, and Thunderbolt really didn't do as much as I thought it would. Kingdra hits a Double Edge, finishing off Elekid. I bring out Smoochum because Ice Beam is neutral, and I go for Follow Me, which Alakazam's Psychic gets a crit and takes me down. I send out Magby once again, Ice Beam to take down the Kingdra, and then out comes Heracross. I go for Ice Beam and Flamethrower, which unfortunately I am outsped, but Smoochum does survive on a little bit of HP. Heracross goes down. Out comes his Shadow Electabuzz. Ice Beam into Alakazam doesn't take it down. I go for Ice Beam and Flamethrower into Electabuzz, but unfortunately Alakazam gets a crit, taking down Magby in a single hit. I bring out Wynaut, which goes down to Shadow Rush. Ice Beam does very little to Electabuzz, and unfortunately another Fire Punch finishes me off. Okay, well, this shouldn't be too bad, right? Well, this is now attempt number 9, and that's just because all of his Pokemon hit extremely hard and I need great luck. So what I do is I Encore into Shadow Sky, and I go for Thunderbolt to immediately try to take down Alakazam, and I need to put the Kingdra to sleep as quick as possible, because otherwise Magby just can't hit the field, and I need Magby to take down the Heracross. And I go for a swap into Cleffa, and I decide to go for Wish on Togepi to help the next Pokemon coming out if it's low on health. Unfortunately, Kingdra hits a double edge and takes down Togepi in a single hit. I bring out Elekid once again. Pretty Pebbles rain down. And now that Kingdra is asleep, I can bring out Magby to take down the incoming Heracross. And I decide to leave both Elekid and Magby on the field, because Elekid can take down the Swellow in a single hit. And then out comes the Heracross. Pretty Pebbles rain down, doing damage to all. And then I go for Flamethrower and Thunderbolt into Heracross and Kingdra respectively, which is not quite enough to take down Kingdra, but as long as the Electabuzz is by itself with the Snorlax, it should be going for Shadow Mist most of the time. It's not guaranteed, but Thunderbolt does take down the Kingdra, and then out comes his Shadow Snorlax, his final Pokemon. Shadow Break into Magby, taking it down unfortunately, but I do get the Flame Body on Electabuzz. And this is the point at which a couple of attempts had failed, because I really need the Snorlax to hit Wynaut with Destiny Bond active. That way it takes itself down. But unfortunately this time it decides to just go for Elekid, and then I have to bring out Smoochum. And one big difference though is that the Electabuzz is actually burnt this time, so I will be able to take it down a little bit easier than previous attempts. Ice Beam gets a crit and takes it down anyway though. Another Destiny Bond, please, just attack the Wynaut. Okay, takes down Smoochum, and now I'm just down to Cleffa. It's a 50-50 on whether or not it's going to hit, and a 50-50 on whether or not it's going to attack who. Goes for another Shadow Wind, this time finally taking down Wynaut, and taking itself down in the process. So 9 attempts, definitely not the greatest, but we move on to Corrigan once again. He leads with a Slowking and an Ursaring this time. And I go for Thunderbolt into the Slowking, which doesn't quite take it down. Flamethrower to finish it off though. And then out comes Aggron. I go for Thunderbolt into Ursaring and Flamethrower into Aggron, which gets a crit and takes down Aggron, which I might have actually needed. Out comes Walrein, and Elekid survives a slash. And then I begin overthinking this. So Hidden Power is super effective against Walrein. However, I do think that Confuse Ray might be kinda helpful, so I decided to go for Confuse Ray. However, in my overthinking, I decided to use Thunderbolt into the Ursaring that is clearly going to protect this turn, which is definitely wrong. Thunderbolt's not enough to take down Walrein, but Flamethrower does take down Ursaring, which brings out his Shadow Poliwrath, which always uses Shadow Sky on the first turn unless it sees a KO. Walrein finishes itself off with Confusion, and then out comes Shadow Mr. Mime. I go for Thunderbolt into Mr. Mime, taking it down to about half, and Shadow Storm hits, nearly taking down Elekid. Go for Flamethrower, which finishes off Mr. Mime. Poliwrath sets up Shadow Sky, finishing off the Elekid. And then I go into Smoochum, and I go for Psychic because Poliwrath is a fighting type, and Confuse Ray just to hope that it hits itself. And Psychic takes it down pretty low. Poliwrath hits a Shadow Rush, taking down Magby, but at this point it doesn't matter. Fruity Pebbles rain down, and I go for Follow Me and Psychic to finish it off. Okay, well, pretty easy Gorgon. Oh, and I decide not to learn Safeguard. I go into the battle against Eldis. He leads with a Manectric and a Ninjask, and I go for Encore into the Manectric, but unfortunately it just goes for Shadow End, which isn't great. Luckily though, the Ninjask is going for Dig, meaning that I get a free turn every other turn. I go for Flamethrower to finish off the Manectric, and now that Smoochum's out, Ninjask might just change its attack pattern. I go for Ice Beam, which does one-shot Salamence, which is nice. And then out comes Flygon, and just as I thought, Ninjask uses a Silver Wind, taking Smoochum down. Unfortunately, it does get an Omni boost. I go through Elekid, Flamethrower into Ninjask to finish it off, and then out comes Marowak. And unfortunately, I don't really have anything to take down any of these Pokemon. I go to Wynaut, hoping that maybe I can just get a Destiny Bond trade to give one of my Pokemon a little bit of experience. But unfortunately, neither of them decide to attack Wynaut, and Elekid goes down. And so I bring out Cleffa, and Destiny Bond finally activates. Now I am wearing the Quick Claw item, so I get Destiny Bond right at the beginning of the turn as well, which is why I thought there was a chance I could get it. But unfortunately, Wynaut goes down, only taking down Flygon after the fact. So despite that looking pretty decent, this is now attempt number 7, and that's just because Manectric is really annoying because it always likes to go for Shadow End instead of Shadow Sky, which is what I prefer. So it does take down Togepi, which is a little unfortunate, but honestly it gives Smoochum a decent area to jump into, and because I know the Ninja's going to dig into Magby, I can take it down with Magby, and then at level 49, Smoochum learns Perish Song, which I teach over Sweet Kiss, and anyway, Salamence comes out. Manectric hits another Shadow End, taking down Magby, which is unfortunate, but it does get hit by Flame Body, which is kinda nice. Go for Wynaut. Ice Beam finishes off Salamence, and then out comes Flygon, and I go for Destiny Bond, and Manectric hits Shadow End into Wynaut, not quite taking it down though, but it does take down Flygon, which is quite nice. I decide to bring out Elekid because I know Lapras is going to be coming out soon, and the luck actually worked out perfectly because now I'm going to be able to hit Marowak with the Ice Beam, which takes it down in a single hit, and Manectric is going to go down to Flame Body. So all that's left is the Lapras. I go for Psychic and Thunderbolt, which Thunderbolt is doing over half, and Psychic nearly takes it down. It just sets up Shadow Sky, so I know I'm able to take him down pretty easily. So a lucky Eldest that almost looked planned. Anyway, we move on to the big box legendary, Shadowlugia, who is definitely going to be a bit of a threat. It takes down Elekid in a single hit. I bring out Magby, go for Ice Beam, which doesn't do that much, but it gets a freeze. And I foolishly use Flamethrower, but luckily Ice Beam does take it down, and we move on to the battle against Greevil. He leads with a Shadow Moltres and Rhydon, and I go for Hidden Power into the Moltres, which does take it down a single hit, with a crit though, so I'm not sure if that's necessarily a one-shot. Ice Beam does take down Executor in a single hit though, which is nice. Rhydon misses a Shadow End. I swap over to Togepi, because Magby doesn't really do anything right now. Shadow Rush takes down Smoochum, and I send out Wynaut. Rhydon misses another Shadow End. I go for Encore into Tauros because I think it's going to go for Shadow Sky. Unfortunately, it does see a KO, so it goes for Shadow Rush. I send out Cleffa, and another Shadow End miss. And I decide to go for another Encore and Yawn, because maybe it doesn't go for Shadow Rush, but it does, and takes me down. Shadow End finally hits, taking Togepi all the way down to the focus band. A good 10% chance. I go for Follow Me, and Shadow Sky gets set up instead, unfortunately. Go for Flamethrower, but unfortunately Togepi goes down to the Shadow Sky. And then I go for another Flamethrower, which takes down Tauros. And here's what really matters, how much damage do I do to Articuno with Flamethrower? And it is well over half. Okay, I think this is very doable if I can get here with Elekid. So now on attempt number 6, I go into the battle, this time leading with the Elekid and Magby. And I go for Thunder because Thunder is the only way to get a for sure one-shot on the Moltres. Then out comes Executor, which goes down to a Flamethrower, and then out comes Tauros, which goes down to the combined efforts of both Magby and Elekid. And then out comes the Articuno, which is more of the same. I have to just hope I don't get hit by a Shadow End. I don't. Fruity Pebbles rain down. Go for Flamethrower and Thunderbolt, which do take down the Articuno. And then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Zapdos. And this is where the strategy comes in. Shadow End hits, which is lucky, actually. I send in Smoochum. And now I just need to outspeed and hit a Perish Song. I go for Confuse Ray into the Zapdos, hoping it'll hit itself, which it does. go for Parasong, so now in 3 turns I'm guaranteed to win, unless I get extremely unlucky. So I swap into Togepi, Fruity Pebbles rain down, and we all go down to 3. Go for Flamethrower to take down the Rhydon, and go for Yawn to try to put the Zapdos to sleep, which would guarantee my victory. Unfortunately, it doesn't hit itself in confusion, so it's able to take down my Togepi. And at this point, I didn't realize it yet, but I am making a big error in that I really need to swap out Magby, but unfortunately I don't. So now I'm on the last turn of Parasong, and if it doesn't decide to take down Magby or hit itself in confusion, I lose. But luckily it does hit itself in confusion, and I'm able to take it down with Parasong and win the game. Now, after seeing the damage that Flamethrower actually did to Zapdos, I probably didn't need to use Parasong because I think Ice Beam would have been enough to take it down with it. But that doesn't matter, I really wanted to use Parasong, and it ended up working in the end anyway. So, how well did this team of babies do? Well, they beat the game at a time of 15 hours and 44 minutes, and lost 29 times throughout the game. But the crazy thing about that is that only 3 of those were to random trainers. So theoretically, baby Pokemon actually do incredible throughout most of the game, except for on boss fights. And even then, they did first try a few of them. But even still, they do find themselves near the bottom of the C tier. Definitely not as bad as Swellow though, which is incredible to say considering that these are all baby Pokemon, but I think they did pretty well for themselves overall. Not ending up in the D tier and not any lower is a pretty good sign that just having a decent amount of type coverage is probably good enough to beat this game. And I guess I didn't really say anything on it, but Togepi is actually really good because it has Follow Me, Wish, and Encore. So given the right circumstance, it can use Wish and then Follow Me in order to make the Pokemon target it. That way it can get taken down and then the next Pokemon can come in and then get a heal from Wish on that following turn. It's just a little unfortunate that it didn't end up in any of the major fights. And then Wynaut, of course, is always going to be decent because it can take itself down with the opponent, given the Quick Claw activates or that it's given time to set up Destiny Bond, because it means that you can always trade, and anytime you trade a baby Pokemon for something much stronger is always a good trade. Now, it is a little unfortunate that some of the baby Pokemon are just not nearly good enough to be usable. Like Azurill just doesn't really have anything going for it other than Ice Beam and Water Pulse. And had it been a water type, I think it would have at least had some sort of niche in this, but unfortunately even the other normal types can learn those moves too, so it doesn't really do anything spectacularly. So good job, baby Pokemon. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and bye!